Good evening, everyone. We are working on the fans. We're trying to find out. I personally went back to look, and the closet is locked, and we're looking to find someone to unlock the closet so we can turn the fans on. The air conditioning, there is air conditioning coming through the vent over here, but I'm trying to. I just want to announce that this town hall will be on accesstuolumne.org/insurance. If you have a website and want to see it later, or have friends that want to see it later, accesstuolumne.org-insurance or /insurance. We also will be on the Facebook page is actually being live. The Facebook page of Access Tuolumne, it is live as we speak, and also on pinetree.net. I don't know if you're familiar with that. That's Calaveras County media outlet, social media outlet, from Amador, I'm not sure which, but part of Calaveras. They're also streaming this live. My name is Jim Garaventa. I'm the mayor of the city of Sonora, and I want to welcome you to tonight's Insurance Town Hall meeting. Sonora has a long history with fire. Like most regions in the towns during the gold rush era were devastated by fire, consuming large portions, if not the entire city. In July of 1852, the town was destroyed by fire, but our citizens were resilient. They put in side streets in Sonora, not only for transportation modes, but actually as fire blocks to help stop the future huge conflagrations. Also in 1852, the fire department was created with fire companies. It was not a municipal fire department. It was actually private fire companies got together and tried to help save the town. As things evolve, today's fire department is one of the best, I feel, best fire departments in rural cities of California. Thank you. And to prove that, you're not familiar with it. It has an ISO, that's the Insurance Standards Organization, ISO rating of 3. And the lowest number, the lower you are, the better it is. I think, and someone from the county may correct me, I don't know, I think the ISO in the county and some of the fire districts there are 7-8. So we're a local response area in the city, as opposed to the rest of the area.
Let's go!
I just want to set the background for how resilient we have been and how we have done our part in doing our share of medicine. Recently, we've in the wake of the Camp Fire up in Paradise, we've actually improved our fire ordinance and made it even stronger. So we're doing our part, and we're asking for the insurance companies and others to do their part. So I want to welcome you all, and welcome Commissioner Laura, State Senator Borges, and Assemblymember Bigelow for coming, and staffs. And I'd like to, hopefully we'll get the fans going and get the speakers going. County Supervisor, 1st District, Sherry Brennan.
Thank you, Jim. And I want to start by thanking the City of Sonora for hosting this event tonight, because as we can see, this is very important for all of the citizens of Tuolumne County. We've been dealing with issues of fire insurance since the Rim Fire, 2013. And while a lot of other parts of the state are now dealing with these same issues, our constituents have been dealing with this for 6 years. And in saying that, I know that you are incredibly passionate. I know that you have endured, in a lot of cases, incredible hardships. I want to applaud the insurance commissioner for coming out. To my knowledge, he is the first insurance commissioner to do these kinds of town hall meetings and to actually ask for questions, come out and talk to constituents. And so, with that, I have assured him that we are very passionate, we have a lot to say, but we are also respectful. And we appreciate him coming to Tuolumne County. I could talk for a long time about everything that's been going on at a county level with vegetation management, our fire resiliency task force, but you all came here to hear the insurance commissioner. And so without further ado, I would like to both thank Senator Borges, Assemblyman Bigelow for attending to hear this, and introduce Insurance Commissioner Lara.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's great to be here. And by seeing the size of the crowd, you know, this only further exacerbates why we need to be here, why the Department of Insurance has to be here. I want to take a moment and be respectful of your time and understand the heat, so I'm going to try to get through this presentation as quickly as possible so that we can get our department here to start answering some of your questions. At any time, if you have to leave, we haven't gotten to your question, I want to make sure that you know we have my staff here with the Department of Insurance polos. If my staff can raise their hand, I know some of them are on the back. I want you to make sure that you talk to them, give them your information so that we can get back to you with your specific claim or issue or question. I want you to know that even if you may have to leave, we will have somebody getting your information and getting back to you. And so, without further ado, I want to start our conversation and know that since 7 months into taking office, we have been worried about these issues of non-renewal, understanding that this has been going on for years. But we wanted to get the data, we wanted to put everything together to bring to you all what we have found, which many of this stuff and information you already know. But I want you to know that we are committed, and I directed my staff to, instead of being in LA or Sacramento, to actually come up to the WUI areas, to come up to our rural California towns, to listen from you firsthand. And we understand that if you cannot get insurance, you can't sell your home. If you can't sell your home, that depreciates the value, which means then less resources for already communities that are economically depressed. And we also know that this is heavily impacting our senior population who are living on fixed incomes and can no longer take these massive rate increases. So I want to start by thanking our supervisors, thanking our state senator, Andres Borges, who, by the way, has hit the road running and has been we've been talking endlessly about how do we fix this problem. Senator Bigelow as well. Look, at the end of the day, fire does not discriminate whether you're Republican or Democrat. This is a statewide issue that we have to fix collaboratively. So let's get on with the presentation. What we have been seeing in the department and in California insurance trends are exactly what you have been living. We in the department are recognizing that homeowners, especially in the wildland-urban interface, which we refer to as the WUI, are experiencing non-renewals. We have a 600% increase in complaints to the department since 2010. Premium increases, we have from the insurance companies more than 100 rate increases filed in 2017, 2018. That means that they're in the hopper. We know that it is contributing to a lack of available insurance in the traditional homeowners and renters market, and that the FAIR plan is far from fair. That it is not a comprehensive plan that only, and so many of us can't even afford the insurance of last resort that is the FAIR Plan. But we have a plan for the FAIR Plan. So what is driving these risks? We know that 10 of the 20 most destructive wildfires in California's history have occurred over the last 3 years. As risk increases, the cost of insurance increases and the availability of coverage decreases. And we also know what is really hurting us is that insurance companies consider the very recent past to underwrite and determine rates for the very near future, with now estimated $25 billion in losses for the insurance industry in 2017-2018. So let's talk about residential underwriting. Old school and new school. Old school, the insurance companies would come in and look at your individual property. They would look and see about, the hardening efforts that you have made, the defensible space. You know exactly what I'm talking about. New school now, to even get to this level, you first have to pass what they're doing now, which is an evaluation filter based on satellite imagery of the region. No longer even coming to the granular level to looking at your home. And I know some of you have been non-renewed without even having somebody come and do an evaluation of your property. And we keep hearing that over and over. And the only, the things that they evaluate are slope, fuel load, types of fuel, and access. But from a satellite imagery level, to even get to the point where they're talking to you about if you're going to be able to get an insurance policy. We have a plan for that as well. So this is what I want you to understand, and what Tony Signorelli is from my department, going to come and reiterate, is these are the rules that we currently have in place on the laws to protect you. Very, very dismal. Essentially what it says, the first line, is that you need to have a guideline, that the insurance companies need to have a written guideline that talks to the level of exposure that you have, and that they may not be unfairly discriminatory. That's it. We also know that current law says that an insurance company must provide you 45 days of notice of non-renewals or renewals. And we know that in some cases that we've been reporting here, some of you get 3 days, some of you get 10 days. Well, they're breaking the law. It needs to be 45 days. But we also know that this is horribly insufficient. And we also know that law says that an insurance company needs to provide the applicant, the consumer, a specific reason for the declination of non-renewal. And we know what those are. Your fire risk score, right? All of a sudden you went from a 4 to a 6, or sometimes you don't even get that and you just get non-renewed. We also have a minimum of 2 annual renewals required for those that have suffered total loss from a disaster, and 1 year continued coverage for homes in the area adjacent to the fire. Under legislation I did last year, we added an additional year of guarantee renewal for those homes that did not suffer total loss, but were in the vicinity as well, to give you further protection. This is it, folks. That's all we have as a department to protect our consumers. So what we want to delineate here are the issues that we've been hearing from you, and we've been hearing from all the different other WUI areas, and quite frankly, urban areas throughout the state. This is not a Northern California issue. This is a California issue. When you look at what happened in San Bernardino, in Ventura, San Diego, Santa Barbara, this is a time for us to coalesce as an entire state, because this is not just a Northern California issue. We know that underinsurance and non-renewal issues continue, and it's only going to get worse. We know that the 45-day notice of non-renewal is completely unfair, and they're not taking into consideration your individual tenure or claims history. This is when we hear, I've been with this company for 30 years and I got dropped anyways. No consideration whatsoever. There's no consideration for pre-fire mitigation. I have done everything that our local government has told me. I have done what the insurance companies have told me, and guess what? I'm still being non-renewed, right? We also hear, even if there's no change in your individual risk, they're still not renewing you. We know that, and this is a big problem for us, that there's no clear statewide standards for fire restraint structures. There is no clear statewide standards that tell you what we need to do as a state to mitigate fire risk and lessen the risk. I keep on forgetting to keep the microphone close to my mouth. And so this is important because the only thing that exists are a patchwork of different rules and regulations that you need to adhere to, then you still get non-renewed. And so we want the state to work with the insurance industry, to work with our local leaders, to come up with a statewide standard so that we all are in agreement what we need to do as a community to lessen the risk and keep insurance and keep those in the insurance market in our communities. We also know that it is insufficient, the FAIR Plan is completely insufficient. And it is not fair to send people to the FAIR Plan if it's not going to fully cover an entire property comprehensively. And we need to make sure that we increase the coverage limits that, by the way, haven't been risen since the 1970s. We also know this reality is that many of our homeowners in the WUI are on fixed incomes and purchased their homes before all this was happening. Before all this confluence of different issues of extreme heat, wet weather, climate change, resiliency, you call it whatever you want, but we know that our climate is changing. And that wasn't something we took into account before. But now that we need some resources to help adjust to this new climate reality. We also know that many of you and many folks that have contacted our office have an inaccurate coverage A, which is your dwelling coverage, which is leading to underinsurance. So many of you pay the premium every day or every month and assume that you're properly covered. And the onus is all on you to contact the insurance company to determine, is there a cost of living upgrade? I made upgrades to my home. Does this impact my new coverage? All that responsibility falls on you. And I say that's unfair. The insurance companies have to make sure that they take part of the responsibility of coming in and letting you know. So you know exactly what your new limit level is and your responsibility, and then you make that decision, what's ever appropriate for you and your family. But the onus cannot just be on you to understand and know your complex insurance contract. So these are things that I often say are important. I didn't bring it up, and I know you know, but I'm being my mom here to remind you that the best way to increase availability and affordability for insurance is to decrease our overall risk as a community. And these are points that we in the department feel are critical to getting us to lessening that risk. You know many of these already. Building codes, fire restraint modifications, land use planning, community abatement, defensible space, enhanced infrastructure, and wildfire sensors. These are great. They're great that we're mandating you all this, but it is super expensive. And many of you who are on fixed incomes and who are, quite frankly, working middle class can't afford to make these decisions and make these changes. So we're trying to figure out ways to give you resources to be able to do that and not bankrupt you. So a way forward for us is 2 points. We need better transparency in the rates at non-renewals, so we know exactly as a department where this is happening, so we can dispatch our staff immediately to help you make the appropriate choices for you and your family. We didn't have this data back in the day. So I did a bill that required that all insurers must report their fire loss data by wildfire risk score, protection class, and zip code to create a more credible rating data. We didn't have this information before. We're also requesting them to give us detailed information in their rate filings, specifically on how wildfire risk scores are affecting their rates. So we can do our own research and analyze this data and not just, you know, what so many of us say, trust but verify. We need to verify this information. And lastly, we have now released data that we required the insurance companies to give us on the 2017 and 28 impact of non-renewals from those fires and from those fire seasons, so that we know where exactly this is happening, and we have that data. We have it by county level. We want to continue to analyze it because counties are very large, as you know, and that doesn't really tell the full picture of what's happening in our more urban areas, and urban obviously depends on the county, and our more rural parts. Because right now it's just the average. We want to dig deep and figure out where this is happening so that then we can be proactive as a department and not have to wait until we get these complaints from you. These are common sense legislative proposals that we are proposing the legislature work on immediately to help us and to give us more authority. Quite frankly, the first point says, if you're an insurance company, we want the authority as a department to mandate that you cover homes that have been properly hardened and that have been in wildfire mitigated communities. And this is fair. We're asking for what is fair. If you have done what is right, then an insurance company should cover you. We're not saying cover the entire community, but we're saying if you've properly done everything that you've been asked to, that you need to cover this home and this family. We want the authority to do that. For the problem of underinsurance, we want you to know exactly what your coverage is and an up-to-date coverage. We want a complete replacement cost estimate in writing from the insurance companies annually, and I want the insurance companies to cover building code upgrades. Because this is a way that will help us mitigate the amount of money that it takes to cover the mitigation updates that the building code upgrades that you need to do. So we want insurance companies to provide a policy that includes these upgrades that are critical for home hardening. We want to extend ALE, which is additional living expenses, to homeowners who suffer partial loss or suffer from causes due to the fire damage. And this is true about the Camp Fire and what we've been seeing from all these fires. An insurance company, if you don't have a total loss, or if you have a partial loss, they won't give you those additional living expenses to families that may not have a total loss, because there's like, your structure's there, you're fine, but there's no electricity, there's no water. A septic tank might have melted and now created an environmental hazard. How are you gonna have somebody move in to a home in that state? So we want the insurance companies to cover additional living expenses for these families until you can actually get into your property and live there with the resources you need. We know that the 45-day limit is ridiculous. It might have been able to cover enough notice back in the day, but not now. 45 days is not enough for you to be able to plan and for you to work with us to try to find you appropriate coverage after a fire. We want to provide more advance notice to policyholders with an additional 180-day notice on top of the 45 days to give you the time to figure out what your options are. It is inhumane to do that within 45 days. You're still dealing and processing with the trauma of what just occurred, and now they're gonna drop you within 45 days. That is not enough time. We want more time before you get non-renewed. We want to allow flexibility to policyholders in submitting their contents and inventory claims. It is inhumane to me to have the insurance companies ask you for a complete inventory list when your house has burned down. How are you going to come up with that inventory list? It makes no sense. We want more flexibility to say, you know what, up front, give me 75%. So that at least I have money up front to be able to figure out what I'm gonna do, where I'm gonna live, what my options are. And if you want 100% of your inventory list, then we go back and we do the full inventory list, but at least you have some money to figure out what you're gonna do in the meantime. So we also want, as we talked about, and I just throw out 75%, but there's different percentages that we're willing to work with, but we just want to be able to give you money as quickly as possible so that you have something to be able to make decisions. We also talked about this data and the satellite imagery. We have limited authority to verify these underwriting risk scores and models. We want the authority to be able to validate this data before you're putting people through the ringer to see if they're going to get insurance or not. We currently have very limited authority, and we know that the providers of these products are independent contractors that are working with the insurance companies, but we have very limited authority to see and validate if that data is accurate. We want that opportunity to see that. And we also want to increase the policy limits for the FAIR Plan. We want to make sure that if you're going to be going to the FAIR Plan, that you get one plan that is a full homeowner's policy with appropriate limits, so that you don't have to buy an additional policy, additional wraparound policy, because guess what? You keep on paying that administrative fee every time you're buying a different policy. We want one policy, and it's going to be actually fair, that's one policy that's all you need, that has comprehensive coverage with comprehensive coverage limits. And we're asking that for the FAIR Plan. So this is legislation that's currently now in the hopper, in the legislative cycle, and this is legislation that we're supporting that creates community level standards for wildfire mitigation. Senator Dodd that creates model defensible space requirements, again working with the insurance companies to make sure that we come up with an agreed upon mitigation measure so there's no surprises for anybody, right? We know what we need to meet, and that means that they cover us if we meet these guidelines that they're working on as well with us. We want to make sure that and mandate that these independent adjusters that come out from out of state know California law, that they know that we have the strictest consumer protection policies in any other state, that they need to adhere to that before they're coming into California, trying to assess you and give you recommendations without understanding what the laws here in California, not Texas, not Arizona, not Idaho, no offense, but we want to make sure that you're protected with the laws that we have in place here in California. We want to make sure that we create tax credits. Senator McGuire is working on tax credits to help offset home hardening and vegetation management costs. We know how expensive it is, and we're trying to figure out ways, whether it's a tax credit, whether it's a loan forgiveness program, or it's a subsidy for our low-income seniors to help them do the mitigation upgrades that they need to do to live safely. And we know that some of our seniors can't physically do the work themselves, which is now an added expense that we need to be taken into consideration if we want people to actually incentivize them to do the right thing. We have Senator Leiva's bill that got signed by the governor that creates more consumer disclosures for people living in mobile and manufactured homeowners. Assemblymember Wood in the Assembly is also working on a state fund created to provide financial assistance for homeowners to help pay for the cost of fire hardening. Again, this is another attempt to figure out how we give you the resources to do the home hardening that you need to do without having you to have to pay everything out of pocket. The additional thing, the last bill I want to talk about is Senator Friedman's bill, which requires the state fire marshal to develop an inspection plan for structures in the WUI. We want these inspections to happen. So many of you have gotten dropped without an inspection, and that is not fair. We want to make sure that inspections are happening before any decision is made on your property. So, how are we responding as a department? I'm almost done and we'll get to your questions. So after I came into office and realized we're getting all these complaints about non-renewals, I said enough. We gotta stop relying on the 1-800 number, which by the way is a great number. And and I know the anxiety people get when I say 1-800, but we have people there Monday through Friday, live people answering your questions, helping you with the claim. And if by any small chance you have to leave a message, our call response back is 2 minutes. So we want you to know that we do have that 1-800 number, we'll put it up, but I decided to create these strike teams to actually come to you. And this is our third town hall that we're having already. In September, we're going to be in San Bernardino County on September 12th, Calaveras County, September 16th, Butte County, September 19th. So enough of us staying in our ivory tower, we're coming to you. And we're actually answering your questions directly and coming to our constituents here in the most affected areas. Number 2, these are notices to the insurance companies that I've already done, that we're working with to make sure that they are here to what we're requesting. Again, I have no authority to force them, but we are working with them to understand the critical situation we're in. We asked them to, we requested the insurance companies to extend additional living expenses and to not deduct the land value of your policy to survivors of the 2017 fires, which we saw this was happening in Santa Rosa and in Napa. If for people wanted to move to a different community, they would deduct your home value, with your land value, I'm sorry. That is ridiculous. You've been paying this policy. It should not be deducted because that's only going to harm you when you're trying to buy another property somewhere else. We want, again, out-of-state adjusters to adhere to our laws. We want expedited claims handling, so urging companies to expedite their claims and offer billing grace periods. I mean, these are righteous things to do. Some of you have been with your insurance companies for 30 years. We want them to show a little humanity and give us some expedited claims so that you can get the resources you need. On your home inventory, we're urging insurance companies to waive the requirements for a full home inventory, especially if your house is burnt down. It makes no sense. We want them to give us flexibility, and I have to say some of them have, and those that haven't, we're going to continue to work with, and we'll have to, push them as far as we can. As you know, from the Rim Fire disaster response, our team is here to do the enforcement efforts, and we also have a full law enforcement unit that investigates fraud. And if you feel that you have been a victim of fraud, and this is not just for homeowners insurance, for any type of insurance policy, we have investigators that do this for a living, and you're more than free to open a case with us, and we will investigate it. Many people don't know that we have that part of our department, and that we deploy our local assistance centers as soon as our first responders allow us, so that we can help you make those insurance decisions for you and your family. I try to go as quickly as possible. This is the number. I want to thank you for being here. I'm going to pass this over to have Senator Borges say a few words, but then have Tony Signorelli, who is my deputy commissioner on the consumer side of our department, to answer your questions that you have written down. We have gotten over 100 questions prior to this town hall, which is great because it allows us to synthesize a lot of the questions you might have. Again, if you have an additional question, write it down for us. We'll get our department to try to get your answer question. If you have to leave, we have our department here to work with you one-on-one as well. I want to give you every possible option so that you feel that we're taking the time and that we're dedicated to answering your questions. Again, this is our number. I want to just pass the baton really quick to Senator Borges, and we have our staff here with the cards to ask your question. Thank you, Senator, for being here. Really appreciate it. Senator LaMalfa.
Take a look. It is hot in here. I would like to give a really big shout out, of course, to our insurance commissioner, Ricardo Dada, for putting this event on tonight. If we could just give him a round of applause for making this happen. Good evening, folks. I'll just take a moment of your time. I know that brevity is an art lost in politics, and I hope to revive it tonight. But my name is Andreas Borges. It is my honor to represent you in the state senate. I know we're moving into questions right now, but I want you to know that we are taking these issues, these community issues, very seriously. We are working hard on legislation. We are working hard with our counterparts in the insurance division, as well as with the governor's office. I'm going to pass the mic over to our Assembly Member Frank Bigelow, but I want you to know that when you have questions, we work in tandem. In fact, government works best when we work together. And right here is a testament. We got the Assembly, the Senate, and the Insurance Commissioner trying to make certain that we pave the right path forward for you folks in this community, Tuolumne and elsewhere in the affected areas. Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight, and we look forward to making real progress on your behalf. Thank you.
It's a little repetitive, but it's good to see you all. I was here on Monday evening visiting with a group of people, and so it's a pleasure to be back here tonight. In fact, we were in the same building. The insurance commissioner has given us a plethora of information. It's a lot of data and information for us to all absorb and understand. I'm one of the many of you who's had their insurance canceled. I understand it, I get it, and it's a tough nut to crack. In fact, I want to just share with you, there's a lot of staff in the state capitol who's got family houses and cabins that have been canceled. We have state legislators. Everybody is being affected by this in some way or another. But what we are seeing is the insurance commissioner trying to grapple with this major issue, get his arms around it, and focus clearly in on what the best solutions are in moving forward. There is a commitment from both the Senate and from the Assembly to work with the Commissioner's office to try to find the solutions that are best and most appropriate. This last session, I will tell you, a number of bills have gone through, and they've all kind of been parked, that would have provided some solutions, but they would not have been the comprehensive solution that is needed for this major issue that's going on in the state of California. I'm going to close by just saying, I hope you take this information home. I hope you absorb it. And if any of you have got questions, whether it be tonight or in the future, I'm available. And my staff will be available to help you, in the staff in Sacramento, to try to respond to your questions or queries, or if you need a file open to address the impact that you have felt, let us know so that we can help best address your need. So everyone, thank you so much for coming up. Thank you for showing up with the passionate signs. Thank you for your enthusiasm and, most of all, your courtesy in dealing with this issue. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Tony Signorelli, Deputy Insurance Commissioner with the Department of Insurance. We received, as Commissioner Lara mentioned, a number of advanced questions, and so what we put together was a PowerPoint that we hope will answer a good amount of those questions, because a lot of them were similar questions about non-renewals, cancellations, premium increases, the FAIR Plan, that sort of thing. So I thought I'd run through those pretty quickly and then get into some of the more specific questions. We're going to try to get as many questions as we can that will provide you all with the most benefit that we can get in this time period that we have. First, just really quickly, the underwriting laws, as the Commissioner mentioned, we only have very few laws in place today that gives us authority to regulate when insurance companies decide to write you and when they decide to not write you. They must have guidelines in place, and they can't be unfairly discriminatory. 45 days notice, you heard about. You must get a declination letter that provides a specific reason. Now keep that in mind. We've been able to successfully resolve some of the issues. If it's not generically, we're not renewing you because of your zip code or the fire risk score. There could be other reasons where maybe your propane tank is 3 feet too close to your house. Maybe you could resolve that issue. We've been able to resolve some of the more specific issues, but obviously we have limited authority in resolving the generic issue of overall wildfire risk. And then the Commissioner also mentioned the additional renewal periods.
Just to give you an idea, we have top 10 tips on our website. You don't have to read this. I'm going to go through them all pretty quickly. They all relate to the topics that we're discussing here. This is the top 10 tips for finding residential insurance. It's located on our website. First tip, if you get a non-renewal, contact your insurer and ask them what specific actions you can take to mitigate and maybe...
We already know this stuff.
Understood. These are responding.
Look, man, people are going to lose their homes if they don't get
Right,
insurance.
I understand that.
How are you going to force an insurance company based on profit, making profit, to come and help us, to do the right thing and be righteous? These companies are not righteous.
Understood.
I bought my first house 3 years ago up here, working my ass off. I'm going to lose my house because I can't get insurance.
But
And you guys have to do that. You're saying you're going to force them? You can't force them.
Let him finish. Let him finish. Not your turn. We have these kids.
Like, we already know this. Like, you're telling us stuff.
Thank
we
you. Not
already know.
everybody knows this, and these are related to the specific questions that were asked earlier, so I'm just trying to answer your questions. Tip 2. Please come to us if you have a non-renewal so that we can see what's going on. We can resolve some of these situations. Obviously, some of them we can't, but at a minimum, we want to get information in so that we can gather the information and better understand what's going on, so we can bring it to the governor's office and the legislature, so we have more ammunition to get something done in Sacramento. I'm happy to answer these questions, but these are your questions.
You know, we don't have the time to wait. We need action now. Now. What can you do now for us? You know, your own data says you've been watching this happen for the last 9 years, since 2010.
Right, and we're here now to listen to you and get your feedback and move
No,
forward.
this is publicity bullshit.
Wait a minute, please. We invited the insurance commissioner here to have a conversation. Please, let's give him the opportunity to answer the questions. There needs to be a tremendous amount of work that has to be done. Please, let's give him just the opportunity to answer the questions.
Okay, we're going to move to other questions. First question. What kind of incentive does the state offer for Firewise USA community sites? There are a few insurance companies that do offer either premium credits or availability of coverage, but there's only a few that do that. That's the whole point of the commissioner's proposal, is to create state law and teeth that if you do mitigate, whether it's a fire-safe community standard or some other standard that we come up with, and you have a community standard and your individual home is hardened, that you will have that availability and you will get those mitigation credits. There was several questions with regard to California Fair Plan, and I know that there's a lot of people here that have California Fair Plan, and so I wanted to answer a few questions with regard to Fair Plan. The one question is related to monthly payments. Currently, you have to pay in 3 or 4 installments, and that's a burden on many people because you're used to paying things on a monthly basis. It's easier to manage that. That's an issue that we are currently working with the Fair Plan on to try and change that billing practice so that they can break those payments up into 12 installments rather than having to pay 40% up front and then 3 or 4 subsequent payments. This question is, I've been canceled with 10 days notice, nothing by mail or email. Is this legal? No, that's not legal. The commissioner mentioned 45 days notice. In fact, if you didn't get a 45-day notice, technically your coverage continues until you do get that 45-day notice. So if you are not getting a notice, or you're just hearing it from your agent or broker and you never got a notice, contact us and let us find out what's going on. And
then what will happen?
if the facts are just as I said, then we'll reverse that, and we'll get the company to reverse that non-renewal. This question is that the DOI, the Department of Insurance, it has a lengthy approval process for company rate and program filings. Can you tell me if there are plans to expedite that process for the DIC policies, which is the wraparound policy that they have to offer? We don't have any backlog in companies' filings with regard to their difference in condition policy, so there shouldn't be any issues there. If you're hearing otherwise, just contact us individually. Sure. What is your recourse when we're receiving notices? Obviously, it's to contact us. Is there a list of insurance companies who are still willing to insure in your area? On one of the slides, I didn't get to that point, but just so you know, it's not just the 5 or 6 companies that are on the commercials that you see on TV and radio. There's about 50 or 60 companies that write in the state. I know this area is a little bit unique, but check with your agent or broker. If your agent or broker can't get you coverage that you think is suitable and affordable, try and expand that out. Go to our website. We have an agent and broker search function where you can look for brokers in your area or even outside of your area to see if they may offer products that aren't offered within your locality. The next question, what are the potential gaps in coverage caused by being forced by the fair pay policy and then the wraparound, the so-called difference in condition policy? It was on a slide, but I didn't get to it. Obviously, if you get the fair plan, you can decide whether you need additional coverage. That additional coverage you will need would be liability coverage, water damage, certain perils like that, but you're only going to be covered in the fair plan for the fire and a few other coverages. So you'll want to look at your particular financial situation to see whether you need to get 2 policies or whether you're comfortable with the one fair plan policy. And as the commissioner mentioned, I mean, our goal is to create a situation where the fair plan is offering liability coverage, and so you won't have to purchase that second policy. And that is our ultimate goal, so you're not paying 2 premiums, you're paying 1, and that will hopefully reduce that overall cost. We're working right now with the fair plan, and to the degree there is some pushback by the fair plan, which you might imagine, and to the degree we think we have authority, but to the degree they litigate, sue us, then we will go to the legislature and get the authority if in fact we don't have that. But we're currently in a situation now where we made the request, we're seeking their positive response so that we know what our next steps are.
What about a hub that set up labor with people that need to clean up their homes to get the coverage? If your homes are overrun with debris and whatnot, you need some people to do that. In the city or the county, set up a hub, massive hub.
Yeah, that's certainly beyond the insurance issue, but it's related in the sense that to the degree we are able to create standards that the insurance company will then be required to write you on, that would obviously be a step that would flow from that in terms of, number one, seeing if there's money and funding for a lot of that mitigation, as well as seeing what you just suggested in terms of getting the resources.
I was rewritten and because I rewritten when my insurance went down, gas and insurance mitigation. So in the city, in the county, or the state, work together for mitigation to adhere to the requirements of the insurance.
Yeah, I agree, but until we get a law class passed that says once the community has done that, the insurance company must write, there's no teeth in there to require the insurance companies to then write.
What about the you can't hear the question.
Yeah.
Can't pay $1,000 and have people come and pick me up. Can't work with the city of government. Maybe set up a hub to put people together. People that need jobs with people that need jobs.
Right, so the question is, can we put together a hub of people that have the resources and to be able to do the work and do the mitigation to help people that don't have that ability to do it? And as I said, until we actually get teeth, certainly that can be set up now at the local level and even at the state level, but until there's something behind it where the insurance company agrees to write you, then people are already doing mitigation and still being denied. And so that's our concern. And they're doing different kinds of mitigation in different communities and different parts of the state, and they're still being denied coverage and non-renewed. So until we have the teeth behind that, it's not going to help with the actual insurance piece of this.
You mentioned Firewise in your first question response. How are you supporting Firewise in cannabis?
Well, we support Firewise. The question is, how are we supporting Firewise? We support, everything they're doing, and our goal would be to have something like a Firewise and maybe some other standard overlapped on top of that everyone would agree to, as the commissioner mentioned, so that once these standards are met, community-wise and then individual home-wise, then the insurance company would be required to write you. Yeah, and that can happen. It's just a question of who you're insured with and what they can do, but that was voluntary on their part. This is a question, why can our homeowners insurance be canceled because of a new roof? We have decking, defensible space, but we got to notice that we don't have a work order for a new roof by December 1st. We're not going to be renewed next year. So that's an issue, especially if you have the FAIR plan, or even with any company. If they make a request to you, first make sure that request is in writing. Because we have heard from people where their agent or broker or insurance company said, hey, do this and we'll renew you, and they do this and they don't get renewed. Secondly, if you're with the FAIR plan, they have pretty strict standards of very few homes that they can't write. So they should not be having strict underwriting standards such that they're like an insurance company, because they are the insurance company of last resort. So if you have a roof and it's not leaking and they're asking you to replace your roof, or FAIR plan is going to non-renew you, then come to us so that we can try and resolve that issue, because they shouldn't be that strict in their underwriting. If you have windows and electricity and you don't have a leaky roof, then in essence they should be writing you for coverage. And this is the question that I think the answer is obvious after all this discussion, but does the insurance commissioner have the power to force insurance companies to insure homes in the foothill and mountain communities at reasonable rates? The answer is no. That's the authority that we're seeking, is to be able to have that authority with all that mitigation in these areas to either reduce costs or create availability, or both. The authority would need to come from the state legislature in a bill that's signed by the governor, and it would.
Are you going to sign for this? Are you going to get on that and sign these? Or politicians here going to support those bills or the bills? Yes. You want to know? You get a vote for these things.
Well, yeah. I mean,
They're ignoring us.
the question was, are we going to? What authorities does the commissioner have to force insurance companies to write in the mountain and foothill areas? And currently, the insurance commissioner does not have the authority to mandate that insurance companies write in these areas. And the commissioner has been talking to all the state legislators and the governor's office to get everybody on board with this proposal of creating that community mitigation standard. Correct. And these discussions are happening. Correct. That's why we're here. That's why we're here to get your feedback.
It's going to affect the economy. We're all leaders. And you say that this plan is a last resort, serves as the old resort. There is not a top insurance company that will fight for you. It is the only resort, and no one on a big people can afford it.
Right, and we recognize that. That's why we're here.
We've lived here 5 years and 4 months. We're on our 6th insurance policy. No one will build our house. They gave us 2-day notice from Friday to Monday. Our policy would cost $6,000 and $10,000 a month. Who's going to loan me $10,000 a year? Sorry. Who's going to loan me $1,000 a month? Sir, we know all this. We've done all this. We want to hear from you. We want legislation.
Public option.
What are you going to do? What are you going to do now? Are you saying how are you going to get Congressman Clinton to finally vote to government?
Well, that's why we're here tonight, to get your feedback. That's why we're here.
We're losing our homes.
And I would suggest you contact us if you think. Great.
There was nobody on the care plan who would cover you. My husband said $10,000 a year. We can't afford that. We will lose our house. I can't afford $10,000 a year.
We agree. We agree. It's not fair. And that's why we're here today, and that's why the commissioners here and the senators and assembly members are here to listen to you and to get resolution. We're obviously not going to resolve it tonight, but we are moving to have those conversations.
So, let me just say, we have questions, but if this is your town hall, if you want to just raise your hand and that's how we answer questions, we can do that. Or if we want to do questions so that we can answer those, we can do that as well. We're here to listen to you. For whoever's saying public option, that is something that I'm looking at as well. It is, we're putting everything on the table because we need these changes now. We know this. So if you guys want to proceed with just raising your hand and ignoring the questions people wrote, or we can do whatever you want. This is your town hall. This is the first time we're doing this, so we will be flexible to how you want to answer the questions. Right. Exactly. So we want to. So do we want to do the questions, or do we want to go by raising hands? So people want to write them down, and people want to answer. So why don't we do this, Tony? Why don't we do a couple questions, and then we'll raise some hands. I mean, we're trying to please. We want to please all of you. Oh, and the only problem is because it's being live streamed, we might not capture the question for people that are listening at home. But we'll try to accommodate you all. However you want to ask your question, we want to make sure we get to as many questions as possible. So, Tony.
Our politicians standing over here. What legislation are they putting in? Yeah.
There was a very specific question, I don't know if everyone heard it. A woman asked, what legislation are we putting forward or supporting that's moving through the process right now? AB 1816 is an assembly bill, I think it's by Dolly. My understanding is that it would raise the limit on homeowners insurance claims covered by the California Insurance Guarantee Association from $500,000 to $1 million. Of course, absolutely. All right, second, since you asked the question, I want to be thorough for you, that it would expand the existing incentives for an insurer to issue and renew homeowners policies in high-risk fire areas through write-out credits provided by the FAIR Plan. What we are trying to figure out right now is how do we incentivize the insurance industry, and one of the issues that's coming through in 1816 is to provide a tax credit to insurance companies so they can go into fire-prone areas and begin reissuing policies. That is 1860. Well, of course. But I hope that answers your question, ma'am.
Okay, y'all remember me being up here the first time, right? Okay. Oh, no, I did say something, and let me be really direct. So everyone can hear me. I kind of project real well. There were a number of bills this year presented that would address a number of components to help you, the people. But they've been held at this point until we can work out the bigger, broader issues, and they're being timed together so that we can get an impactful, meaningful piece of legislation that will help you, and you. Okay, so most of you, based on that question, tells me you don't know how the system works. So, every January, do you know every January, bills are presented, and then they go through the system. As they've gone through the system, they get amended and they get worked. We are down to the final 2 weeks. These final 2 weeks. No, I'm not trying to talk down anybody. I'm just saying. So you're aware, we're going now through the final 2 weeks for the legislation to try to resolve those issues so that we can vote on them by the end of this session. If they don't get done, they will get tagged and they will be converted into a 2-year bill to which they will then be acted upon by January. I understand that. This is a very strong concern for every one of us. There are a lot of people throughout this district, throughout every assembly district. Pardon me? The whole state, absolutely. So we're sincere. We understand. I told you, we're all being impacted by the same thing. We've got the same thing. Okay, simply. Okay, so you're asking the question. The lady in the front row has asked, what can you do locally to help mitigate? First thing you can do is make sure you're complying with your LE 100 or your LE 300 clearances around your homes.
Impossible.
With all due respect, I've been a fireman for 47 years.
What about the
I applaud you for doing that.
What's your vote going to be?
I'm telling you, she asked a simple question. What can you do locally? Start by cleaning around your homes and doing the best you can. Now,
How many of you have cleared around your homes?
me,
How many have you?
me,
How many have
I've done
you
it.
canceled?
Very good.
You've been way outpriced of having insurance.
Okay, so
How many?
I'm
How many of you have had, we can't wait. How many of you have had insurance companies come out to your
Right.
house? No.
So,
Through the letters.
okay,
Put it back on us.
How are you going to vote on those 2 bills, Frank?
We have done that.
What's your vote going to be?
We need you to do something. Where do you sign?
that's what we've done. Now, okay, with all due respect, many of you aren't aware, or maybe you are aware of all the money that's been put into the CAL FIRE budget to try to help for the cleaning and the mitigation of the dead and dying trees to move things around in our communities. That's a huge issue. That's a very large issue.
They got
Now-
all the trees and then
Hey,
they
Frank,
just
how are you
left
going
it
to
there,
vote on
and they
those 2
ran out.
bills?
One at a time.
What's your
One at a
vote?
time. Sir, she was speaking over
How
here.
come
I'm
2
trying to answer
times,
this
2
person's
times?
question.
What's your
Sorry,
vote?
sir.
What's your vote going to be?
Thank you, ma'am. I'll continue on. So now, working with the budget, we tried to get monies put in this year, and we were successful. And CAL FIRE is working on trying to address as many of those issues in the different communities throughout the state. So that's one of the many issues. Now, personally, I carried legislation that would have reduced the matching costs to the local governments here from 25% to 10%. That's not been moved forward by the legislature. It's been held in committee. So I haven't been able to get the cost reduction to help CAL FIRE. At the same time, I proposed legislation that would put an additional $300 million just so you all know, so that your local communities would have access to money to help you. That was on the local level, the first thing, to start on the ground combating this stuff. So those are the things that I'm doing. You asked a question, ma'am, now we're here.
Yes, thank you. So CAL FIRE and Tuolumne County has came on the property, ruined the roads. PG&E also came. Now they've dropped over 100 trees just on a small block, and they're leaving them there because now they've ran out of money. So who's going to come make us fire safe? Who's going to roll all those trees off our property?
So let me answer the question. Contact either my office, or you can contact Dana, and let's try to find out. We'll start a case for you. We'll identify what occurred.
Already
With Tuolumne County.
And CAL FIRE and PG&E, they all are passing the buck to the next guy. Oh, those weren't the trees we dropped. Bottom line, the whole 40 acres is full of down trees, and that's where they're gonna lay.
Okay.
Because they cut them concerned about somebody might not be able to drive down the road.
Okay, I'm gonna again say, I need to dig into the details and try to help resolve you with the infighting that's going on between two entities. That's where I can best work for you and be helpful to you. So if you'll please contact my staff, contact the office, so that I can work with you and the existing case that you have to identifying that issue. And that will probably relate to many of you in this room, and we'll be able to help get maybe some of those solutions solved. Sir,
Yes,
back
sir.
to you in the back of the room.
All right. So you said there's 2 bills pending that will help us. How are you going to vote on
Well,
those 2 bills?
I was the author on those 2 bills that I just spoke about, so. Doesn't get any better than that, sir. So, yes, sir. Wait a minute. I had somebody back here. It was this lady right here. Yes, ma'am.
I was just wondering, is it legal in California for insurance companies to give money to re-election campaigns? And I'm wondering if the insurance companies are giving money to our politicians. And I'm wondering if any bill you have, there's lobbyists from the insurance companies that if they're working against all this. I have a feeling there must be.
One, let me answer the question directly. Insurance companies do have lobbyists. They do come in, they do visit legislators, and they do talk about the issues that are impacting them. Yes, that is what happens there in society. Same way you come into the office, or you can come into the office, and you can lobby and do the same things. Do they contribute to members? I'm answering her question. Yes, they do contribute. Yes, I have accepted contributions from insurance companies. That is not with a string that says you'll vote this way or that way. What they want. Hey, you might think that sounds silly, but one of us here happens to be honorable about it and makes it very clear you don't accept money on terms and conditions that have an effect on the outcome. I don't work that way.
Going to California right now, maybe, for the next 20 years, maybe.
Wait a minute, we got the people over here still. That's legislation that hasn't come up. I'm not aware of whether or not that's possible to make that happen. I'll have to find out the answer to that.
But it seems like a conflict of interest.
Okay, so now wait a minute. The gentleman in the back was the next. I'm okay with running the meeting, but sir, you have a question.
When is the state going to eliminate the regulations on these fire breaks that are proposed in these foothill communities? Money's been allocated, grant money's been allocated for all these foothill communities, and they can't do any of the work until the environmental reports come back. Here we are, it's August. We've had the money since last November. We can't even bid the work until the environmental report comes back. I mean, where's common sense?
Through your voice to the ears of those that are listening out there, absolutely that needs to happen. We need to get those fire breaks put in. We need to get our communities more fire-wise and safe.
It's the only way you're going to get ahead.
It's the only way you're going to get around it. The brush and the dead trees are too far ahead of us right now. We've got to have these fire breaks in place. We've got to get around the EIR process, and that's been held up for years with studies both on the federal and the NEPA side and on the CEQA side here at the state of California.
Why can't the insurance companies invest in this county or all these foothill counties. They invested money in NASCAR, sponsor a D6 or an emancipator, sponsor a break. If we all threw a little money into the fund, the fire safety
Somebody with a fresh idea.
money to work.
Just so you know, I think that's a real fresh idea. That's a good deal, buddy. I like it. I just hope nobody falls out of conflict of interest trying to buy their way through, though.
You gotta do what you gotta do to make it safe for people.
Right. So now we have a lady over here. Let's get back to you now.
My question is for all of you. If there was a private co-op that you could buy into for fire insurance and homeowners insurance, would you do it? Yes. Private owned by you. You were the owners of that, just like a credit union. And if it was for fire insurance, would you do it? Yes. And if it were in a community, it was owned by you, so you could dictate. It would be not administrative, there was not for profit. Today, I don't, but I would be curious to know how many of you would do it. Or if there was one stage, one plan, like the affordable care.
That's a really good series of questions. By the way, it's not new. It's one that's been circulated. And just so you know, both myself, Andreas, both been part of the both Senate and the Assembly process of working with working groups to try to find the solutions to these very issues. So don't think that we haven't been engaged. Please don't once think that we haven't. We have been engaged, and it's a difficult issue when you've got people up and down the state with different viewpoints as legislators. So now, hold on, this side of the room, I'm going back to this side. Hey, Jim, I can answer most of your questions, but if you want to take them, Ricardo and I want to make sure that everyone here gets a chance to have their hand raised or have their written question answered. So let's say we just did a bunch of hand raising. Let's go back to the written questions and help him. Now you're talking about it.
Thank you. Again, if we don't get to everybody's question, we're happy to meet later or get your feedback at any time. Next question. How much money is in the California Fair Plan? In other words, are they making a profit? No, they're not making a profit. They're essentially a non-profit entity, believe it or not, and they can't take in more money in premium than they pay out in claims. And so they basically break even virtually every year. If they do run into a problem where they don't have enough money, though, they can go to the insurance industry, the companies that write in the state, and require them to assess them to recoup that money that they lost. A word about surplus lines insurance. Some of you maybe were able to get surplus lines insurance. It's a non-admitted, unlicensed insurance company that's not admitted in the state, but it's allowed to sell in the state under certain conditions. Just keep in mind that could be an option for you, and it would be one policy versus having to buy the Fair Plan and the wraparound policy. But do keep in mind that they can charge whatever they want. There's even much less regulation for those companies than there is with our licensed companies. And if that company does go under, they're not backed by the Guarantee Association, and so there would be no recourse. But many of them are financially solvent, and they are possible options for you. This question is there an underwriter for ISO? ISO is the company that owns the Fireline and the Fireline scores. And is there a way to appeal my score? Currently, no. We had proposed that you should be, number one, in addition to getting greater authority with regard to these Fireline scores and other models, we had proposed allowing you to appeal those scores and prohibiting the insurance company from taking that action, whether it be refusing to write you or non-renewing you, until you've gone through that appeal process. So that is one of the proposals that we're hoping to get through, in addition to getting greater authority over these Fireline scores and other models. We did have some questions, about 3 or 4, with regard to the AARP coverage and some other similar coverages where your insurance company essentially give you a rider that says you have lifetime coverage as long as you pay your premium and as long as you cover your home for 80% of its value. And you lived up to those two conditions and your insurance company still dropped you. Bring those to our attention. We're currently in talks with the two companies that we're aware of that offered that lifetime continuation of coverage, and we're going to see if we can resolve that issue. If there's no other conditions and you've met those two conditions, you should not be dropped on your policy. I've received a lot of questions with regard to PG&E and their responsibility. We're really not in a position to say how that would relate to this. Obviously, if insurance companies can collect from PG&E after these wildfires, that will go into offset the claims payments they made, and theoretically that will reduce the increases down the road. But right now, that's not really an option until they've actually recouped money. The other issue with PG&E that we've been asked is with regard to, shouldn't they be a player here and be putting money into mitigation and other aspects to this? Again, we agree, there should be some responsibility there, but that's not an issue that we're really in a position to resolve. This is a question, and it's a similar question to others. I was with my insurance company for 30 years, and they provided no justification and decided to non-renew me. Again, we're in this situation, and again, there are some counties that are more unique. Obviously, this is one of those counties, and come to us if you think that there's an ability for us to take a look at the issue and possibly get a resolution. Otherwise, we'll point you in the direction of the FAIR Plan or other options, as well as keep you informed if you give us your contact information as to the developments that might be going on with regard to any new bills that are passed or any new things that we do on the administrative side as a regulator. What is the governor's plan to assist California residents living in rural areas for obtaining affordable insurance? Again, that's a similar issue. We're in contact with the governor's office. The commission has been meeting with the governor's office regularly to try and get some immediate help before even this session's over, as well as put together through this feedback, through these town hall meetings, to get ready for next legislative session in January to be able to hit the ground running. But we are still looking at some immediate things that we can do, hopefully soon.
I have a question in regard to that, getting ready for the next legislation session. Has anyone addressed the fact that when they drop these homeowners and we are no longer bundled, in addition to that, to add insult to injury, they raise our auto insurances 15 to 25% because we are no longer bundled through no fault of our own?
Yeah, that's certainly an issue where if you have homeowners insurance and you're non-renewed, but you also have your auto insurance, you got a 20% discount for having the two policies, you then lose that discount. That is certainly insult to injury, I agree 100%, and that is another reason why we want to create the situation where the insurance companies, are willing to write both your auto and your homeowners, and we've even had ideas in a couple of town hall meetings. I don't know how far this would go in Sacramento, but to require insurance companies, but we're taking all feedback, require insurance companies that write auto to also write homeowners. So those are just some of the ideas that you all in other town hall meetings have provided to us that we're taking in and evaluating and moving forward with if there's something there.
You're evaluating it, but my question is, what are you doing anything currently for that?
Absent the overall issue that we spoke about earlier, there isn't any law in place that would require insurance companies, that we'd be able to enforce insurance companies. You're writing their auto, you now must write their homeowners, or if you do non-renew, you can't take that discount away from them, either of those potential options. We currently don't have the enforcement law to do that, but that's certainly an issue, and we appreciate that feedback. Sure.
A lot of people are in this situation here where they're on the verge of losing their insurance. My wife has a friend that lives up the hill. Even the FAIR Plan won't insure them. Their house is now worth $0. They can't sell it, and if they lose everything, they're out. The bottom line is, it goes back to our democratically controlled Senate, Assembly and our governor, if an insurance company writes a single homeowner's policy in California, they have to be willing to insure everybody.
Yes.
With only one choice, we don't have a fair economy. The insurance companies aren't competing against us or the other insurance companies for our business because all they can do is say, whoa, we're out, we're not right in your area, but we can keep writing policies in downtown San Francisco, LA, Sacramento, etc., and avoid us altogether. Force us onto the fair plan at the highest cost with the fewest number of people on there, and not have to, they don't even have to comply with a fair market and compete for our business.
We agree with that, and that's why we want to move forward with these proposals. With regard to the person that you mentioned, with regard to being canceled by the fair plan, I encourage them to contact us so that we can take a look at that issue. Because I mentioned earlier, we did hear where people were being non-renewed or canceled by fair plan. Sometimes legitimate reasons, the roof was leaking and there was issues there, and sometimes it wasn't. We were able to resolve those issues, so I really encourage you to contact us or have that person contact us. We can get your information here too. No, and I agree. Whether it's a reverse mortgage or even a standard mortgage, that is certainly an issue. But no, we agree with that. And so, with regard to coverage, though, you should. I don't know about cost yet, but in regard to coverage, the fair plan should be able to cover the home.
I did, and they will, but here's the problem. When you're 81 years old and you're on fixed income, they want 3 payments for the plan. Those are big lump sums of money at one time. The wraparound policy is 4 payments.
Right, and
Therefore, it is not fair. They need to make it monthly payments so they can afford it, so they can have it.
we agree 100%.
When they do, they also have property taxes.
No, understood. And whether it's
You don't understand, when they're paying $6,000 a year, and you take out so much money out of the paycheck, they'd have to save $500 a month to cover the property taxes and insurance. What do they live on?
No, I totally agree with you, and that's one of the reasons why I mentioned earlier that we have had conversations with Fair Plan to move away from 40% down, 3 payments, and move to a fixed installment plan. Well, we're still having those conversations with the Fair Plan on all these issues, and we're hoping to get a resolution to that. That shouldn't be a hard issue to deal with, and it's an issue. Understood, sir.
Everybody in this audience gets that you guys don't have authority to do anything that needs to be done. I've learned from this thing. I've been around long enough. I've been a lawyer over 50 years. When Governor Hiram Johnson, saw that the railroads were ripping everybody on and only favoring their friends and charging monopoly rents for their services, created a railroad commission, which morphed into the Public Utilities Commission. And I guarantee you, they got authority to make people do things, that if they choose to make people do things right, they make them do things right. And I'm wondering why we don't all get together and create an insurance Public Utility Commission, because you guys are providing, the insurance industry is providing an absolutely essential service. They're charging monopoly rents, and they're using their monopoly power to discriminate against us, the rural customers, because they don't care about us. So where is it that we get sensible government regulation that takes care of this problem? Because you're going to be 130 years old passing one piece of legislation after another. I've written a number of pieces of legislation, and it took me 5 or 6 years for each one of those. We don't have time to do that. So
And that's what we're seeking.
Authority to do this.
Our politicians.
We agree. That's what we're seeking.
Plan for that.
Sir, who decides the amount in which a person pays? What's that based on?
The premium amount, the CAL FIRE, I mean, the Fair Plan premium amount. They're required to file their rates with us at the department, but the law says if the math works out, based on their losses, they have to recoup 100% of their losses, and that's what dictates what the rates are. And so we do, in some cases, are able to say, no, your math is wrong. Here's the right math, and therefore you ask for this increase, but you're not going to get quite that. We're able to do that. Sometimes they come in for an increase and we get a decrease. But it depends on the situation. We don't have 100% authority in that area. That's an area also where we're seeking greater authority.
Does the state hold that money? I was told that the top 10 or 15 insurance companies have the state in it.
Well, no one holds the money. The Fair Plan is not required to make a profit. In fact, it's prohibited from making a profit. The money stays with the Fair Plan to pay claims, and it's basically a zero-sum game. They can only collect enough premium to pay off their claims. And so if they run out of money, they can go to those other companies and be assessed. And if they have money left over, which none of this really ever happens, there's never really money left over, there's never really money that they need to seek from the insurance industry, it's pretty much a zero-sum game, then they would recoup, that the insurance companies would be dispersed that money, but that's rare also.
So the bottom line is that the Fair Plan charging us a lot more money than we're paying previously. So tell us what you're going to do to make that better, to make the Fair Plan more fair so that our premiums are fair to us.
Well, we don't have any solid answers on that question with regard to, as I said, if they can justify that they paid this much in claims, they need to recoup because it's a zero-sum game, we have little authority. We can seek greater authority, but unless it's subsidized somehow by the state or some other entity, it's going to be where it is. But that's one of the reasons why we're looking for other solutions, which is, again, so you don't have to buy that wraparound additional policy to try and reduce the overall amount you're paying by only having to buy one policy versus two policies.
Yes, sir. Hey, you know what? I think a lot of us, that does benefit us, being able to make monthly payments. It does benefit us being allowed to do monthly payments. That's great. That helps people that can't make the big 40% down. But that doesn't take from the total cost, okay, of the insurance. Now, this county here, we've got 10 CAL FIRE departments. Most everybody in here that's being punished by these high rates, we have a fire department, if not 3 of them, in less than 7 miles from your house, okay? You can go right to your maps, hit fire departments, it'll give you one that's 0.6 miles, one that's 2.3, one that's within 4 miles. We've got 3 fire departments around. We're blessed, we've got CAL FIRE, the air tap, out in Columbia. We just had a fire last week over Montgomery Heights, okay? The wind was 10 to 15 miles an hour. It's on an upslope. These are conditions that they say cause problems for us with our houses and our property and ladder fields. Take a drive over Montgomery Heights, go look at the ladder fields, look at the house. The fire was contained in less than half an acre. They had an 80% contained over the course of 3 hours, okay? Look at that one from MapQuest, like these insurance companies do. There's trees all around. Go take a look at it, drive by, the trees were all still there.
Right
okay?
now,
we have that.
We agree with you.
Where's
If
our
I can,
discount for having CAL FIRE and having all this?
and let me speak to that for a second, because it's an important issue. There are 2 filters that you'll go through with your insurance company. One is the fire line score, and one is the protection class. With regard to protection class, that's a score from 0 to 1 to 10, and lower the better. The protection class is regarding fire hydrants, number of fire staff, number of permanent fire staff versus voluntary. But one thing that we did see is that they don't take into account some of the things you mentioned, that protection class. They don't take into account the CAL FIRE fire departments unless they've been contracted to handle the local area that they're looking at. So that's an area that we are looking at with regard to protection class, but that's not going to change the whole fire line score and the models and the problem that we have with our limited authority. So we can fix that issue, but we can't fix the scoring issue without greater
All
authority.
they care about is the fire hydrant being within 1,000 feet from your house. We've got CAL FIRE, they're on your fire in less than 20 minutes.
Understood.
It's not recognized by the
Yeah, the California insurance offices do not even recognize them as a fire force. They don't even care.
Understood. That's exactly
We've got all
the
these
issue.
airplanes and health attack, all this stuff, and we get no credit for it. We're
Right.
all being penalized. We go and take our ladder fuels down from our house. We're being told cut trees back so everybody's house is just gonna be bald. No trees for 100 feet around your house, and then you still get told all these high prices. I've got all the conditions, and I'm being told 4 times the price of my insurance. That's a joke.
We don't disagree with you. Sir? Yeah, you standing?
Yeah. About many years ago, I think it was under the, when Moonbeam Browns first was governor of California, they had the same problem with auto insurance. The companies all decided to cancel California coverage because it's too expensive to repair cars in California and too many wrecks. And at that time, the insurance commissioner and the legislator told them, okay, you don't have to insure cars in California, but you cannot insure anything else. And overnight, it was back to normal the next day.
Let me answer that. Initially, what happened was you, the voter, voted for Prop 103, which for auto requires insurance companies to write all good drivers. And that's the concept that we're trying to bring to homeowners insurance. That wasn't, that for homeowners, that was not in Prop 103. For auto, if you're a good driver, in other words, you don't have so many points on your license, they're required to write you. Every company's required to write you, otherwise they're not allowed to sell in the state. With homeowners, that's not the case. So whether it takes a proposition or following through on these proposals, our goal is so a good homeowner, so-called policy, where if you mitigate the community, you mitigate your home, then you should be given a policy. And that's really the goal here, to get everybody have their available and affordable coverage.
That'll take care of it overnight. Just do something.
So, okay, I live in the middle of this CAL FIRE clearance where they've literally cleared around my house. I am now being punished for a vacant lot that has been vacant for 20 years in public land below me. Why am I being punished for California land that is being cleared by CAL FIRE, protected by CAL FIRE 10 minutes from my house, where, I mean, why when California is putting all this so I don't lose my coverage, sorry. So I don't lose my coverage, so I don't pay 4 times as much that I have been paying for years, that has been increasing every year. And now I am now being canceled by following the rules, by accepting CAL FIRE to come in and possibly trim around and do whatever they want on my property.
I agree, that's unfair.
No, which is what everyone there, every one of you wanted this so this wouldn't happen. Now, why is this happening? Why? Why is this happening when we follow these rules and CAL FIRE comes in and does this work, destroys my friggin' property, destroys everything around my property, so my house has probably lost $40,000 that I can't get back because I'm following your guys' rules. Why am I now being punished again and again and again?
I agree, it should
No, don't agree. What are you going to do?
Well, that's our proposal is, if you do the mitigation and the community does their mitigation, then you have to cover.
I don't have years. I have until September 14th. I want you to cover my insurance then. How many of you are paid by my tax dollars? How many of you guys are paid by tax dollars? Every single one of you is paid by my, no. Every single one of you is paid by my tax dollars, and his, and hers. Every single one of you. And we vote for you in hopes that you would do what is right. And it is not happening. It is not happening. I will pay you a penny a year until you fix this problem. Because my several $100,000 house that I have busted my butt for years and saved up is now worth nothing. If I cannot...
I don't disagree. That's why we're here tonight to see what we can do.
Okay, why don't you all collect money, since I guarantee every one of you makes more than us. Put a pool together for Tuolumne County. Put a pool together. It's our money anyway, so we pay you. You're not doing your job. What happens if I don't do my job? My money gets taken away.
Go ahead, ma'am.
What I wanted to know is Mr. Bigelow's bill. What are the chances that they will pass?
I'm not familiar with the current status of that, so I don't know.
I mean, do you anticipate those passing, or will they get on to the next January cycle?
Thank you very much for the question. The question was, what is happening with the two bills that I spoke about currently? The current status on the 10%, 25% to 10% dollar for the locals. You see the way it's working, just so everyone understands, let me back up and be slower about it. Was able to successfully give CAL FIRE an extra $200 million over what they had for dead and dying trees for removal and helping in the yards of the youth, the people. The very story that the gentleman's talking about. The budget, previous budget, ran out of funds and wasn't able to finish all the jobs that they were doing. And they should have done that, but they weren't able to because we had limited dollars. Increased that within the budget process and made it possible. The budget ask that I made for the additional $300 million was because I had the realization that this district, as well as several other districts that are connected to all the dead and dying trees, all the way down to San Bernardino, all the way up into Alaskan and Northern California, we need more than $200 million to address these needs. Unfortunately, that bill has been held in appropriations. I don't anticipate it coming out right now. What it will be is a 2-year bill, which means I'll get to work on it through the break and allow, hopefully, an opportunity for it to come out in January. Now, the 10%, 25% I was talking about, that was a critically important component to help, like this gentleman right here, and to help the Board of Supervisors here locally to be able to utilize those many millions of dollars, those $200 million, in a way that would be effective, that they could handle within their budget and costs. It takes some money to cover. 75% currently is the way it's structured from the state, 25% from locals. That's a hard hump to get over. I'm still working on that before the end of the session. I'm not giving up hope on that because that's critically important to help this gentleman back here and each one of you in here on that.
Now, if it doesn't, but kind of a three-part. If it doesn't get passed within the next 2 weeks, it gets to January, does that mean it won't come around and get passed again until this time next year?
No. What it means is, what happens, everything goes to January, and essentially, if it doesn't get passed by January and rolled into the new session, it dies. And so that, don't panic yet. What that really means is you've got to take a step back, reintroduce the bill, and then run it through the process. And yes, the answer to your question is yes. Then it goes around the whole year. But then there's the art of legislative activities, because we can then put actions of urgency on it and try to speed it up through the process and make it happen sooner than going through the whole plethora.
Another question I have.
This is part 3, right?
Well, this is part 2. Part 3 is really...
this is Ricardo's show. I'm just horning in because I have fun.
I've been told by insurance agents that California requires the insurance companies to stockpile a chunk of money in order to write in California. And that a lot of insurance companies do not want to have to do that, so they don't want to come and write in California. Which to me seems like it would inhibit the competitiveness between these companies. Is this true?
Well, the insurance companies are required to have a certain amount of capital in place so that they can pay claims, right? We're not aware of any barriers in place where insurance companies are even coming to us and saying that the amount of capital they're required to keep for California policies is so high, and that's the reason why they're not writing business in California. We've never heard that, and we don't believe that that's an accurate reason for, it could have been the exact reason you were given, but we wouldn't believe it's a credible reason.
We don't require more than other states.
Well, I don't know about other states, but we require what we believe is enough to protect the public should a company go under. After the fire in Paradise, one company did go under, and we're lucky that was the only company in the homeowners area that went under in the last 30 or 40 years. And so we do try to keep an eye on that. So we believe we're at the right level, and there has never been an issue where the companies are telling us, we'll write more if you reduce the amount of capital that we have to hold or provide proof of. We've never heard that before.
Is there any way for you to check this?
Oh, certainly, yes.
By companies in England?
Yeah, that's even a different issue where if it's like a Lloyd's of London or something, that's even a lower standard of financial capital. They have very little financial laws in place for these surplus line companies like Lloyd's of London and others. So that could not be a barrier. It's a very minimal amount. That really could not be a barrier of them coming in here. They have other reasons, whether it's wildfire risk or the concentration in certain areas where they don't want to have too many homes in a particular county or city or zip code.
In comparison to other states, do we have a comparative number of companies writing in California as, say, New York?
Yeah, I don't know the number, but I mean, we have about 150 licensed insurance companies that are licensed to sell homeowners insurance. About 60 are players that sell like over $1 million a year, let's say. So we have probably and all the companies write nationally for the most part, except a few that don't. And so the companies in New York, most of them all write either their company or one of their affiliates in California.
And one last. Quick one. You said the insurance companies lost $25 billion. How much did they make?
Well, that's a great question. Over the years, let's say you look at the last 20 years, they made a significant amount of profit in the homeowners business. But if you look at the last 3 years, for example, for every dollar, these last couple of years where the fires are, for every dollar of premium they took in, they paid $2 in claims. And so that's why we are where we are. Is there?
They lost money, so we have to make up the difference.
Yeah, no, we're not saying it's right, but that's the current, status. I don't disagree with you.
Do the same continuity thing here in California for the benefit of the people. We are not expendable profit center for any industry.
We don't disagree. The question was related to, for workers' comp, we have an insurance company of last resort called the State Compensation Insurance Fund. Why can't we do the same for homeowners? In fact, we do, because the FAIR Plan is virtually identical to the State Compensation Insurance Fund. It's just that it's a different kind of insurance and it has different pros and cons attached to it.
The state law competes on the open market. When I was an insurance broker, that was supposed to work the state law because they got a better premium and they got better service than they did on the open market. They are not the FAIR Plan.
Well, in terms of coverages and what value for your coverage, I would agree with you. But we're happy to take your feedback if you have any ideas as to how we can improve the FAIR Plan. We're happy to meet with you later or get your contact information.
If the insurance industry out in the middle of it running it, they run it like they run the state compensation.
Understood.
And we can bail out the people instead of the insurance companies and taxes.
Understood. Yeah, I can't hear your question. Would you like, let me tell you what, let me come down to you.
I was canceled from AAA after 20 years, and they forced me to take a California plan, which now I have two policies, one of 600 and one of 1700, and it's not paid but 60. Now, is that the only policy? I asked him, is there any other company I can go with? Do I have a choice, or do I have to take that insurance?
Well, I mean, you have choices if there's choices available to you, but certainly take what you have and what you purchased with Fair Plan, and then if you purchased with AAA, did you keep the policy with them, the wraparound policy? Right. Well, no, that the one policy proposal has not gone into effect yet. That's what we're working on, so that you don't have two policies going forward.
My question is directed to our local representative. I'm wondering if you think Ms. Reddit or Mr. Kurt, if you guys can answer questions.
Actually, I would love to do that, and I was going to just make sure the insurance commissioner was done, and then invite the other supervisors up. And invite the other supervisors up to share a few words. So yes, I was absolutely.
So, we're going to end the questions and answers at this point. But again, this is not the end of the conversation. It's the beginning. That's why we're here. That's why we're visiting your county and other counties. We're happy to talk with you later, get your contact information, and answer your questions, or contact us at the 800 number or online. Thank you very much.
Another round of applause for insurance, and also for Senator Cordero and Senator Borges. So, at this time, I'd like to invite up, I think we have two other supervisors in attendance, and give them a chance, an opportunity to say a few words. And then I hear there's a couple of questions.
You guys have been hearing politicians talk all night. I'm going to make this quick. You guys have been hearing politicians talk all night, so I'm going to make this quick. Look, we're talking about the last 6 years, the next 2 years. Honestly, it's going to be a hell of a road to walk the next couple years. But let me tell you a real quick story. I grew up in Miwok Village, where my grandfather was picking bark beetles because our forests were mismanaged, and he told me that there was going to be devastating droughts and fires that would come. 25 years later, I'm living in what he saw coming. So, we're talking about 6 years ago, 2 years from now, but the big picture, you guys, is this is 30 years of forest, 30, 40, 50, 60 years of forest mismanagement. So, when I go to the voting pool, I don't care if you're Democrat, I don't care if you're Republican, I don't care what your background is. You guys need to be electing people at the legislative level, at the state level, and at the local level. We're going to fight to manage our forests, because you know what? We live in California, where we say we're green, where we regulate the hell out of all the cars, and it's almost impossible to build a house. I built a house 2 years ago. I had to build it 1,200 square feet because I couldn't afford the 1,800 square feet because of all the damn regulations and all the crap I had to go through. And guess what? We get one rim fire, and that puts off more CO2 and emissions than all this crap combined. So, big turn. That guy hit it on the head earlier. NEPA, CEQA, all those regulations that we have to cut through. If we were given the ability to manage our forest properly, you guys remember on the slide it said that insurance companies used to look at the house, and now they go a mile out? We have fire breaks in our community that we would like to get done, but we can't because we have certain people in this community who sue us every time we try and get work done. So keep that in mind when you go to the poll to vote people in. And also, I don't care where you sit on Gavin. He's done some good things, he's done some not so good things. I don't understand why we have a $21 billion surplus, and yet we're giving illegal aliens free health care. Okay? So what? So if you want a governor, or if you want people
You guys have had your chance, I get my chance. So if you want people who are going to put your needs, you guys had your chance. You guys had your chance, it's my turn. So if you want people who are going to take care of your needs, vote for people who are going to put your needs first and not people who don't pay any taxes, okay?
So I didn't plan on saying anything, but I think after the response that we've seen tonight, is that better? All right, I hadn't planned on saying anything, but I'm going to say it louder now. So I think what's happening tonight is exactly what needs to happen in the early stages of finding a solution. We need to get mad. And so that's what's happening now. But just being mad by itself doesn't answer the question of what we're going to do about insurance rates in Tuolumne County. But to their credit, we've had representatives from the state coming here, listening to you, and listening to the problems that we have. I got a letter, just like I think everybody else in the room did, saying that I need to clear brush on my property, and they sent me a picture of my property that has no brush in it. So what am I supposed to do? So we're all facing this problem. And if we can keep focused on finding a solution, which is going to be making the state spread the risk across the entire region and not just Tuolumne County. That's how insurance is supposed to work. I don't know anybody here. I know I can't afford to replace my house right off the bat if it burns down. That's why you have insurance. It's to spread the risk out. That risk pool needs to include the valley. It needs to include the coastline, Southern California, and Northern California. It can't just be on the backs of rural communities. So what we need to do is pressure our legislators to make that happen. And I think we took the first step today, so thank you all for being here. That's all I have to say. I'm really a proud representative for District 2, so keep it up, and we're going to keep fighting for you. Thank you.
So, it's very interesting because I actually heard commonality, believe it or not, in what both the supervisors said with the comments that were made by the three state officials that were here. Number one, we have to get control of the vegetation management. We know that. There are three pieces that are impacting our insurance rates. They're looking at when they put a point on a map and they draw a big circle around it and they fly it with a drone, they are doing no ground truthing. Their risk assessments have no ground truthing in them, and they simply are just doing a drop in the bucket, and our rural counties are suffering from that. They're looking at topography, and then they look at ingress and egress. So both comments are actually pieces that I know our state legislature is working on. Two more things before I'll go to a question, is that the commissioner is going to have a town hall meeting on September 16th at 6 p.m. at the Calaveras Fairgrounds. So if you have friends that did not have an opportunity to come and listen here, he will be at the fairgrounds in Calaveras County on September 16th. And lastly, I'm going to put a plug in for our staff, folks. Our staff has been working relentlessly on this issue. Yes, please. Because our staff was out in front of this insurance question 3 years ago, pushing and driving this issue at the state level. And so, again, everyone is being proactive. It is not fast enough. We cannot make a change fast enough. We cannot do ground truthing fast enough. We cannot spread risk, as Ryan said, fast enough. But Tuolumne County is working on that. Tuolumne County is working on all those issues. So with that, one question. I know everybody is hot and tired.
This whole fiasco has virtually 109 properties that have no value. My question to you is, are you issuing any directives to the
tax assessor department to compensate for that phenomenon and lower our assessed value across the country.
So the tax assessor sat in a meeting that we had earlier, and we were having those conversations. We actually had, many of you know that the Tuolumne County Real Estate Association has been collecting information. They put a survey out 3 weeks ago. They've had, I think they said 1,400 responses. They brought those binders in, and every one of those illustrated someone that was on the verge of losing their house, someone that had lost dramatic value, and no, I can't give you an answer because I am one person on a board of 5. And so I cannot answer for the entire board. It is something that will be coming to the board. And we did that with tree mortality also, I believe. And some of the other emergency declarations that we've had. I'm looking to our CAO Riggs for confirmation on that. Yes. Okay, so I am going to speak for the Tuolumne County Board of Supervisors as a member of RCRC, which is the Regional Council of Rural Counties. I am a representative on that. I have been just appointed chair of their task force because, again, this has reached critical mass for the state of California, even though we have been pushing it for 2 years. I chair that committee. And yes, we have had insurance industry representation has been in the meeting with us. And we are, our next meeting, we will be meeting with the head of the California Fair Plan. I can't count the number of people that have reached out to me on fixed incomes, seniors that are in the very dilemma that was very passionately talked about tonight. So, with that, I don't know if you want any other answers. I would say that we're adjourned for the evening, I think.